think we have started. Oh, now we've started. Hello, commissioners, special guests that we have, and community members, if anyone's in the room. Welcome to the very first Independent Salary Commission meeting. Today is Tuesday, March 28th, and we will be here from 6 to 8 p.m. My name is Jamie Duhamel, and I use she, her pronouns, and I work on the Charter Transition team in the Chief Administrator's Office. And I'm serving as the project manager for the Salary Commission in partnership with Barb Stiples from the Bureau of Human Resources. Wave hello, Barb. Yes. We have an entire staff team here today, as well as a number of special guests present. But before we do introductions, let's go over some quick Zoom room logistics and review the agenda. I'm going to pass this over to Liam to give a brief Zoom overview. Liam?
Yeah, hi. So this meeting is being recorded for later viewing. A copy of this recording will be posted on the Salary Commission website under past meeting and events. For today's meeting, we have closed captioning available. Unfortunately, we were not able to secure ASL and Spanish interpretation tonight, but we expect to have it at our next meeting. To access closed captioning, you have to click on the CC button on the bottom right side of your screen. Commissioners, please change your chat settings to everyone so folks listening today can follow along. Just a heads up that your chat is also part of public record. Community members listening in, we have the Zoom Q&A feature available. Feel free to submit questions or comments through there. We may not be able to answer all the questions today, but they will become part of the public meeting record. And at today's meeting, we won't be taking verbal public comment, but you can submit public comments through our comment form online on our website or by emailing transition@portlandoregon.gov. Be on the lookout for future public comment opportunities on our website.
Thank you very much, Liam. And I did just get a note that we will be able to see participants once the meeting started and promote to panelists if our guests are in that space. So be on the lookout for that. Okay. Okay, now let's take a second to go over our meeting agenda. We are going to spend the first half of the meeting getting to know each other a little better and setting the context for the work we'll be doing together. And that will include an opportunity to hear from city leadership about the importance of your work, as well as an opportunity to engage with two former charter commissioners who really have the deepest understanding of the vision and the values and the purpose of this commission and its relationship to the desired outcomes of the charter reforms. For the second half of the meeting, we'll talk briefly about foundational documents and then dig in on the fun stuff and share with you what we know about the roles and responsibilities of the future elected body, the current way in which the city sets salaries, and then some examples of methodologies other salary commissions have used. So this is all intended to give you a baseline of knowledge from which to identify what additional information you may be looking for to set your own methodology and salary proposal. So let's go ahead and get started with introductions. So this is an opportunity for us to get to know each other a little bit better. I want to quickly introduce the commissioners to your staff team. So all of you have already met myself and Barb. We've had some lovely conversations together, and we will continue to serve as your primary contacts. But in addition, we have a stellar team of human resource specialists and analysts who are here to help you. So Liam Saar, whom you've already heard from, will be our coordination specialist, helping to keep the meetings running smoothly and our website updated with all the latest information. There's a lot of background work that has to happen to make all this happen. In addition, we have two class comp panelists, Tony McCasker and Courtney Chris, who will be here to help answer questions and help do the research and analysis that you all ask for in order to deliberate and make your decisions. So now that you've met us, we'd love for you to share with each other who you are and how you come to be here. And when I call on you, please feel free to share your preferred pronouns as well as a little bit about why you're here. Just keep in mind, we do have a full agenda and lots of future opportunities to learn about each other. So maybe just a couple sentences about what motivates you to serve, whatever you're called to share. Let's start with Commissioner Angers, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Abby. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an HR manager at Bully Welch, which is a recruiting agency in town. And I joined the Salary Commission because one of my coworkers sent me the link and said they've only had 5 applicants. You have to put your name in. And civic engagement is really important. And that was enough convincing for me. So that is how I ended up here.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Gill.
Hi, I'm Rosanna Gill. I am an HR systems lead for a company called NetApp, based in San Jose. And I saw the posting on actually LinkedIn from Ron Zito, who I interviewed with once a long time ago. Didn't get the job, but and I just felt compelled to do something more locally based because I've always kind of worked remotely for maybe the last 10 years. So I really wanted to do something for my community more locally.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Martinez Alicia.
Thank you. It's Ruth Martinez Alicea. I use she, her, ella pronouns. And I currently the Director of Equity, People, Culture, and Administration at Oregon Food Bank. I applied very similar to Abby. Friends and friends of friends connected with me and said, hey, how about you apply? And my supervisor said, that's a great idea to do something with the time you don't have. So we are going to be magicians and create new time. And I am joining today from Puerto Rico. So you might hear some cookies in the background when I speak. But anyways, good to meet you all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Johnson.
Hi, I'm Joni Johnson. My preferred pronouns are she, her. I retired about a year ago from Travel Portland, which, as many of you may know, is tasked with bringing people to the city. So we had a long-term and continue to have a long-term connection with the city council and helping to shape the city to bring it up to the level of attention and desirability, which is really important to bring conventions and tourism. And similar to Abby and Alicia, a friend of mine got in touch with me and said, you're retired, you've got loads of time. What are you doing? Are you lazy now? And so I thought, no, this would be very interesting. I have some background in this and I've worked for a range of public and private organizations and nonprofits. And so I'm anxious to dig in and start doing the work of the work.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Sampson.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Sampson. I use she and her pronouns. I work on the compensation team for Multnomah County. I joined the commission because working for a compensation team that has a salary commission of our own, I'm very appreciative of all of the work that goes into it. And I'm looking forward to giving back in this capacity for the city.
Thank you. Commissioner Cooney.
Hi, Maura Cooney. I use she, her pronouns. I also had folks reach out to me and let me know about this opportunity. Otherwise, I'm not sure I would have known about it. So grateful for that. I work at OHSU. I've been there for about 20 years. I'm an associate director of operations. And I think this opportunity excited me because it's an opportunity to get out of OHSU world and see what's going on with the city, be involved in a pretty exciting moment in our politics in the city. So yeah, I'm thrilled to be working with all of you and getting to know you.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have our newest addition to the team, Commissioner Medress.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily. I use she, her pronouns. How did I hear about this? I actually heard about it at an event, and Shoshana made an incredible appeal that was very compelling, and then ended up applying that night. And sorry, I'm similar. I'm not in Puerto Rico. I'm in Bend, but on spring break vacation. And so the little ones are going to be screaming in the background. I spent 15 years building a health education nonprofit, and it did health education in under-resourced schools throughout the country. We started as 5 people. It grew to 86 staff members, and I was kind of on the hiring and talent and revenue side throughout all of that. And so I've experience on the hiring and HR side, but on the social impact and entrepreneur stuff. Here's the 2-year-old. And I'm so excited to be here. We moved to Portland now almost a year ago. And so this was such an incredible opportunity to get to know one of the most promising things that's happening. And then my new job, the woman who I'm working with now is very passionate about charter reform. It's like it's her passion. And so I've heard a lot about it through her. And so this was a way to also see that in action.
Fantastic. Thank you everyone for sharing about yourselves. We have a group of extremely qualified and experienced professionals, and we are looking forward to spending the next few months together. So now I'd like to turn it over to a couple special guests who wanted to be here to meet you as you embark on this process. First, I am happy to turn it over to Tracy Warren, the Bureau of Human Resources Deputy Director, to share a few words. Tracy?
Thank you, Jamie. Hello, Commissioners. It's great to meet you and learn a little bit more about you. As you start your work in service to our community, I'd like to offer you the service and support of the Bureau of Human Resources. One of the Bureau's first jobs in relation to the Salary Commission was to reach out to organizational partners, HR peers, and colleagues across the city to provide visibility of the positions you now fill. As many of you said, you heard about it through someone, and a lot of that work was done by members of the Bureau of Human Resources or the City of Portland as a whole. For weeks, we watched the applications trickle in, anxious that parameters were too narrow to allow for a robust candidate pool. The number of residents who are HR professionals with experience around compensation and who have the capacity and motivation for civic engagement seemed worryingly few. We had no past practice to reference and could only hope our outreach efforts were getting the word out. We need not have worried because look, we have all of you and we're very grateful to have you here. The level of expertise, ability, creativity, and enthusiasm for making a difference that is represented on this commission is truly stunning. The work of the commission is in good hands. We are grateful to you for lending your compensation expertise and a broad experience in HR and equity to step into this role. BHR shares your dedication to the city and the public we serve, and the values of transparency, equity, financial responsibility, and collaboration that your work will live into. We are cognizant of the contribution and the work of this commission and what you will make gaining public trust, and we are proud to partner with you. On behalf of the Bureau of Human Resources, we want to thank you for your time, your engagement, and your effort over the coming months. And I'll turn it over.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for those wonderful words. I am also now happy to turn it over to Shoshana Oppenheim, the City of Portland Transition Manager, to also share a few words with you. You may notice that this is a change in our program. I'm sorry to say Michael Jordan is sick today, but Shoshana is here on his behalf. So I'm hoping you will have a future opportunity to meet Mike directly. He's great. I hope you get to know him. But Shoshana, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jamie. And thank you so much to all the commissioners for your service. I'm Shoshana Oppenheim. Like Jamie said, I am the Transition Project Manager. I use she, they pronouns, and I work in the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer. So I've been invited to provide some context for the Salary Commission in your work as we think about the larger reforms. So I'm sure you're aware that in November of 2022, Portlanders voted to change the city government in 3 significant ways. First, allowing voters to rank candidates in order of their preference using ranked choice voting. Second, creating 4 geographic districts with 3 members elected to represent each district, expanding the city council to a total of 12 members. And third, replacing the commission form of government with a city council that focuses on setting policy and a mayor elected citywide to run the city's day-to-day operations with the help of its professional city administrator. That's a lot of big change. And our understanding of the reforms, and I'm so glad that you have 2 of the charter commissioners here to reinforce this, is that the voter-approved charter amendments really will provide the outcomes that Portland's government is more accountable, transparent, efficient, effective, responsive, and representative of every area of our city. Making sure that the city's business can get done and done well right is our highest priority during this transition time. And as we're transitioning away from the commission form of government, it really allows a whole city approach to problem solving. Our 28 bureaus and offices will be pulling together in one direction under the leadership of a city administrator that reports to the mayor. Implementing ranked choice voting with district elections puts Portland on the leading edge of engagement and representation in advancing democracy. And the clear roles and responsibilities at the leadership level will promote accountability in our decision-making. And we have just under a year and a half, or maybe just over a year and a half to get it all done. So there are several milestones that we've already met in our transition planning work. The appointment of the Independent District Commission, the launching of the Salary Commission, and next month we expect to see the launching of the Government Transition Advisory Committee. In April, we will be considering revisions to our elections code to align our charter changes, establishing how ranked choice voting will be implemented and used in the 2024 election, and allowing, I got lost in my notes. And we will, and your work to establish the salaries of our elected officials is a critical step in the work to elect an executive mayor, our auditor, and the 12 legislative council members. Your work is part of a larger set of reforms that include revisions to our city code, the adoption of our districts, and all of the changes that I just mentioned in our city elections. The care that you take in the work to consider and establish the salaries of our elected officials will ensure that our full-time elected officials are able to serve the public as the Charter Commission and Portland voters intended. It's through this work that we may make the civic promise of the charter amendments a reality. I'm confident that you will apply your experience and knowledge and center equity in your research and your recommendations. I do want to take a minute to underscore your authority to set the salaries for our councilors, mayor, and auditor. If 3 of you agree on a recommendation of what the salaries should be set at, that information will be incorporated into our city budget. City staff is here to help and support you as you develop your work and your research. And it is you that will ultimately determine the compensation for our elected officials. This work is historic, and I want to thank you so much for volunteering your time to serve on the Salary Commission as members and as alternates. This work could not be done without your experience and commitment to the city. On behalf of the City of Portland and of the Chief Administrative Officer, please know how much we appreciate the time that you are committing to this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much for both of you for taking the time to be here and for those words of encouragement. We really appreciate it. Both of you are more than welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting, but we also understand if you need to leave. Bye, Tracy. Thank you so much. Okay, so now that you've had some time to connect with each other, let's talk about how you connect to this work in a meaningful way that reflects the original desired outcomes of the Charter Commission. And before I introduce our next guests, I want to be transparent with you about some of the challenges you will face. It is probably obvious to all of you by now that this commission does not fully reflect the diversity of the city, nor does it reflect the full diversity of HR professionals, to be honest. It is really important that we call attention to that because it has direct impact on your ability to deliberate amongst yourselves from a variety of lived experiences. Basically, you won't know what you don't know. And I want to be clear that this happened for a range of reasons that have nothing to do with you or your willingness to serve, nor do you have any ability to change it. You are here in this moment together, and your role is vitally important. And so I'd like to encourage each of you to consider this to be a real opportunity to lean into this work in ways you may not have considered. I'm hoping each of you will be inspired to think deeply about the ways in which you can help move this commission in the direction of equitable outcomes. Whether that be seeking out additional resources for yourself to help you better understand and get comfortable with anti-racist language and anti-racist policymaking, whether that be by speaking up to offer creative solutions to address the disparities that you see, or whether that be by ensuring you have access to understanding the lived experiences of others who will be directly impacted by the decisions that you make here. I consider it my most important job to provide you any and all of those things as you choose to step up to provide leadership in this space. So with that in mind, I am really grateful to Robin Yee and Gloria Cruz for being willing to have a dialogue with you about this work. I believe both of them have a few things to share with you, and then we can chat about it. So Robin, would you like to start?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jamie. And thank you all. My name is Robin Yee. I use he, his pronouns, and I was a former Portland Charter Review Commissioner, served for close to a year and a half. So, you know, from one commissioner who did that work to you all, thank you so much for your service. Like it's an incredible opportunity, and just I really know how much it means to, you know, spend the time away from your family and on top of all the other important stuff that you do. So, you know, thank you so much. And thank you. And then maybe, you know, depending on how this happens, sorry for creating this commission and, you know, for your place in it. But I'm very hopeful that we'll come up with really great outcomes here. Yeah, so Gloria and I wanted to just, you know, make some opening remarks, again, add some more context and bring you back to what our conversations were looking like at the Charter Review Commission when we created, you know, the Salary Commission that you all serve on, and then mostly just leave time for questions too, because it's already been a lot. I'm sure you are all digesting. I'm sure you were, you know, clued in when the election happened, but plenty more to learn from this opportunity, as Jamie put it. So, you know, first off, I just want to say this is such an incredible opportunity. Not many times do we get to create something brand new and then set the precedents, right, for what our city can be, who the representatives of our city can be. You know, what does it mean to have a city council and a mayor and a government that's responsive to people, that really delivering the services they need, right? That was all the spirit of the Charter Commission, and that flows into the Salary Commission as well, right? For us, the Charter Commission, I think we all agreed, right, and there was a lot of consensus on that commission of 20, that it's not, you know, as you know, we were able to package a very like robust, meaty policy. So it's not that we didn't feel that we could make a decision about compensation, but that we understood that the best kind of policy solutions are ones that involve community, the ones that involve a lot of listening, right? That it builds more trust in the ultimate outcomes when we have, you know, in your case, a dedicated team of 6 or 7 with all the staff that can really do this work to listen, to learn, to understand what's happening in other places and apply the best practices to really understand Portland in this unique context. And so, yeah, again, we want this Salary Commission and its work every 2 years, right? All your successors in the future to say, you know, a part of like what it takes to, or what resources, right? That's the fundamental question of HR. What resources does it take to allow people to do that work? We know it takes so much support for folks to show up, you know, as much as they can for their work. I think it's a really important and noble task that you all do in your professional lives, right? And to apply those values to this work, because ultimately our Charter Commission was so invested in making sure that financial barriers weren't going to be a problem for the kind of potential representation, inclusion in politics. You know, we wanted to create a system where if there's a Portlander who feels able and fit to run or to serve, who has a lot to offer, that we would give that opportunity for the voters to decide, lower barriers to participation. And we wanted the leaders of our city government to be full-time, to be fully focused on all the work of the city, because problems aren't getting smaller, issues aren't disappearing. This is a complicated world, and it requires a deep bench of perspectives to really legislate, right? We wanted you all as a salary commission to spend the time to understand the changes of the work itself, of these positions, right? And not be beholden to the past, but knowing that, the current city council does more executive work. There will be less executive work for those councilors, make that adjustment. Also, though, there'll be more legislative work in a lot of ways, right? They'll have committees likely that will, be focusing in on really key issues of the city. That could be an opportunity for more work, more discussion, more public engagement. And, not most importantly, but I think a key thing that we heard the whole, 18 months of community engagement was like, they wanted councilors and electeds to be focused on community engagement, constituent outreach, to be based in the districts that we now have, or we'll have soon, right? And, more focused on engaging and talking to people, understanding their lived experience to help it inform government policy. Right. And so with all those adjustments, we wanted to make sure that you all had the tools to right size, the compensation that's needed to do that, to be able to focus on that tremendously important work. And just, I'm so glad that we also have just HR professionals to do this work, because, it's an opportunity to expose the public to the importance of human resources, what that really means. Like, what an exciting opportunity to really bring that in a concrete, way for a lot of people who may not know about this entire very important, element of work, right, and of our government. So sorry I talked too much, but I'll pass it to Gloria, and I'm looking forward to any questions you may have.
Thanks so much, Robin. Gloria Cruz, I use they, them pronouns. I'm currently the director of human resources for an organization called Education Northwest, and I am, more importantly, a former commissioner myself for the Portland Charter Commission. And I heard lots of great things already from you folks, and I am really, really excited to be here to kind of share some of my perspective, and really wanted to echo some of what Robin said, and I think come and offer just a little perspective from, from the seat of a human resource professional who was involved in that work. And I think that, this work is something that the city, that we felt, and through our process, really felt like had an opportunity to make such a big impact. And I think I wanted to make sure to center that and call that out. But I first all would definitely want to thank you for your commitment, for your time and expertise, for the time that you will be dedicating to this process. It is definitely an involved process, and it can definitely feel, not to shadow it, but it can definitely feel thankless at times. But the work that you're doing is very important. And I think I wanted to kind of speak a little bit about agency. I know that Shoshana kind of mentioned it a little bit, but some of the agency that you will have here in this space to make really important decisions is something that, that you will be engaging with community. And I think, my hope is that, there's a lot of curiosity and a lot of leaning into conversations with community, and really taking this as an opportunity to learn a lot about, what are the concerns that are, that Portlanders have? And how does that play into a compensation process such as this? And, I think another thing that I kind of wanted to impart was mostly just around how I think there can be a lack of respect for human resources as a practice, and I think this or that it can often get overlooked as being really strategic and really instrumental in the success of organizations, and where equity kind of crosses the ability to be strategic in the HR function is something that I think can often be overlooked. And this is, I think, such a great opportunity to to kind of step in to some of that that light and really kind of show the value that HR has, and really be equity focused in that same right. So I guess I just wanted to talk about the unique perspective and the unique ability that this group will have to kind of bring that people-centered, equity-centered work that you all do, I'm sure, in different elements of your work to this process. And just thank you for that. So I think with that, maybe Robin and I can open it up for any questions you all might have. And hit us with what you got.
Yeah, let's talk about it. What are your reflections? Also, just real quick, would it be helpful if I stop sharing my screen? Would it be easier for people to see each other? I see a lot of head nods. Okay.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Let's do that. Excellent. Okay. And see everyone. There's a raise hand function, but I see Commissioner Angers.
Yes. So, Glory, when you mentioned leaning into conversations with the community, were there certain places or certain, I guess, where did you have the best conversations? Where did you look? Was that something that people would reach out to you, or is that something that you were seeking out?
Yeah, I mean, there was, definitely opportunities for engagement. We did have a community engagement coordinator who was fabulous. And, really, it was just public meetings, hearing from, different testimonies that would come through direct contact via our emails, because your email will be, a city email now, and you'll have they'll have direct access to that. So those requests, but also in any sort of information sessions where we had experts at various points in the process coming in and kind of understanding, trying to very quickly download as much information as possible that was relevant to any particular point. But taking that and really then thinking about the questions that we heard from community, and really sitting with that and understanding and, unpacking some of their testimony and really trying to understand what their ask was, what their concern was. And then, think about the information that we were given in, again, other areas of the process. Hope that helps.
Thank you. I'm going to go in order of the hands I see raised. So Commissioner Martinez Alicia.
Thank you. Thank you for trying to pronounce my name. Let me say that is Martinez Alicea.
Alicea, thank you very much.
And my first name is Root, and it sounds like a ginger root. My question is for both Gloria and Robin. I usually learn a lot from just asking, what is something that you know now about a role as a commissioner that you wish you knew at the beginning of that journey? That you wish for us to know?
I'll take a first stab at it, Robin. I think, yeah, I'm not quite sure how this group will, situate itself and what rules and agreements that you will come to and how you work together. But part of our process was we had leaders that would kind of be in, were they called chiefs, Robert? I forget the term that we used, Robin. Whoa.
Chairs?
Chairs. I don't know why not. We had chairs that lasted for a certain period of time. And I think one thing that wasn't explicit in the transferring from chair to chair was kind of the work it took and that I felt was necessary for the chair to really lean into the full, the leadership of that role and take that on, and the kind of work that it took to kind of ensure that, folks were coming to sessions as prepared as possible. If there was something that was unclear, during a meeting, that, there was only a certain amount of time that we are together, and to make sure that we're asking questions and leaning into, like, I didn't understand that. Say it to me again, like I'm a fifth grader, and really leaning into that. And some of the work that it took for chairs, but also some of the work that it took just for folks in the group to kind of, again, come prepared to make whatever decisions needed to be made during a specific meeting. Thanks for that context too, Robin.
Yeah, I added a comment in the chat to +1 to Gloria. I think it's like, the commission, because you do end up working you'll be with each other through at least July, right? And we're all, residents in the same city and whatnot, that like you have that ability to demonstrate to the public that you have, in a good way, like different perspectives on the commission, right? Like different styles maybe that might invite other certain types of people in and, outreach out. So I think shared leadership is great. To your question, Root, I feel like, and as you can see ultimately what the Charter Commission did, it did defy conventional wisdom. Let's put it, lightly, like that, no, I think I would have wanted to be even more comforted knowing that, like, we can like really embrace the power and the responsibility you have, and knowing that there will be future groups of folks in their time, on this commission that can also adjust, or not even adjust, but like understand Portland in that time, or our city government in that time, and understand the awesome opportunity it is to set that precedent and to create the kind of compensation structure, if you will, or I think of it broadly as like that kind of, who can be a part of this, who might even envision themselves as being able to take this job or to seek this job, right? That like, that, that's really cool. You can do that. 3 out of the 5 of you agree. You make that happen, no matter what you've seen other cities do, no matter what you've seen, or what the past has been in Portland. And, for us as a Charter Commission, we knew that like ultimately everything would go to the voters, and that we knew that we were going to have a robust 18-month process. And so, like, not feeling like, oh, we have to get it perfect on the first try, and like don't show anybody any of our thinking. Like I think we really benefited, like Gloria said, from showing our work constantly. It made us better commissioners, it made us better people, it made us better listeners, and ultimately it felt good as a commission to refer something that ended up being you know, overwhelmingly supported by Portlanders from all different parts of the city. I mean, that's ultimately really reassuring, right? And I would have even loved an even greater encouragement to really just go where the need is, go where the data tells you, go where your instinct and what you're hearing is, rather than feeling, you know, so confined by practice. Because like, there will be others to evaluate, you know, people will give you comments. People will definitely let you know how they feel, you know, if you invite them, and really embrace that, right? So it's not like, oh, I gotta get perfect and no one else is gonna double check me. And then we hit publish on this job posting. It's not like that, right? So.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
Hi, thank you for being here this evening. I have sort of a specific question. Since you had a number of different things in the Charter Commission, a lot of pieces to it, but our focus is salary. Could you share with us a little bit about the specific concerns that came up in your discussions, or maybe public feedback as it related to the actual compensation, the salary piece of this, aside from setting up a commission to handle it, but actually what people said or what their concerns were?
Sure, I can I can add some, and Gloria, I encourage you to fill in the gaps or add your recollection too. I can tell you this, in every single conversation, written, community, impromptu, over 18 months, it was very clear that Portlanders felt like they needed more people working on the issues impacting the city. They needed more people out there talking on the street, understanding neighborhoods, you know, you name it, right? Like oversight, creating policies, talking with other people across the state and the region, right, to solve problems. So I think there wasn't a single minute in my understanding of the commission where we thought anything other than full-time, with the resources and the ability to focus full-time on full-time issues that are honestly, like, you know, we could be legislating every single day. We're not gonna get to all the growing, you know, needs of our city, right? And you know, pandemic on top of that, and you know, things that we can't control, like national trends, all of that, for instance, right? So, you know, so we were thinking, okay, great. So, you know, that's what helped inform a larger council, a geographic-based council. If there was anything that was not even counter to that, but, you know, people were rightly concerned about costs, what this looks like, right, compared to the status quo, which is what they've only know, unless they've, you know, lived in another city and really understood that city council's, you know, compensation structure. Unlikely, right? But like, so balancing that thing, like, you know, people might be aware of what the current city commissioners and their dual executive manager of bureaus role, you know, what they make, I think close to like, you know, 130,000, and then the staff that it takes to run their like 4 to 5 bureaus on top of all of their other responsibilities. And so, like I said in my beginning comment, we were like, you know, there's a lot of levers that are going to be changing, and I think qualified HR professionals are the best to adjudicate. You know, you're going to see less executive time in some ways, sure, right? Like, you're not running bureaus, that's the point, right? But like, you expect even more legislative time, because right now council is only meeting as a council once a week, you know, structurally, right, for some X number of hours. But you might see more subcommittees, you might see more work groups, right? Because there's 12 folks now, they could subdivide and work on a bunch of issues. And like, people desperately wanted the outreach. They wanted, like, we want to know that we can reach, you know, like, for instance, I live in St. John's, right? So like, my North Portland, whatever future rep, that I know where they're going to be, that they're going to have office hours, that if I needed to find them and their staff, I can go to that location and I can make sure, you know, I get an answer in a way that people didn't feel like was happening now, right? So, you know, I'm not an expert on that, you know, compensation, but like, factor that in, right? Like, they need to be out in the community more. Maybe their offices also need a bigger budget to do more community outreach, because not everything is just happening from City Hall and City Council chambers, right? So those are, I think, how you operationalize those desires into both compensation, so that people, elected candidates, if you will, like, can focus fully on the job and all that it requires to be a good city council member, and balancing that with, like, yeah, some changes. Does that mean less overall compensation than the status quo? Sure, maybe, right? Like, up for you all to really look at that. I hope that started to answer your question. I know you might have more specifics, but throw it to Gloria.
I think that covers it. I mean, I in short, you know, when we look at compensation, we're not just looking at market data, right? Like we're looking at the complexity of the role. And so when we view this role, the complexity of this role, we can't compare apples to apples per se, you know, with the status quo. Like there really is a completely like another layer of engagement with community and all that brings. So I think that's, you know, in short, I feel like how I would summarize and underscore what Robin expressed.
Thank you very much. That helps.
We still have plenty of time if there's anyone else who would like to offer some reflections or ask questions.
I think I would maybe just I want to say something about this, just because it was something that I felt keenly aware of, and I know that some other commissioners felt aware of, and I already kind of addressed it before, but you know, these some of these sessions are open to the public, and there is a certain amount of you know, withholding that can be done for fear of appearing a certain way. And I just want to call that out. I want to call out the elephant in the room. I want to speak to it, you know, take away some of its power, because really it's so important that you engage with each other and lean in to what you don't know. And it's okay to not know. Like, we're professionals, and I know that, you know, that can, I think in our normal HR roles, that can feel really scary already, but I just want to kind of say that, and my hope is that, you know, you do lean into the conversations that you have with each other and with other folks who come into this group. But I think that was something that I definitely want to impart, because it felt like we didn't have enough time, or it just wasn't something that was addressed, and largely because we didn't have a group like we had before. So, but yeah, I would just say that.
Anyone else?
It's gonna be fun. I mean, I like, you know, not feel like it now, but like I learned so much about the city and about its people, and you know, restored my belief that like you could, I mean, just imagine like 20 people in a virtual room for 18 months and we could agree on enough things. Like you can't even do, I mean, name another situation where that happens. It was an incredible experience to learn, yeah, and to just to really listen. Like that's, I think I'd like to think I listen, and then going through that experience, I'm like, okay, now I know how to listen a little bit more, you know? And yeah, so I just think it's a great professional development opportunity for you all. And I know that's, I don't want that to be lost in it, right? Like I think you're all modeling, like anybody can be a part of this like civic life in our city, right? Like half of you got like some friend really thought, you know, you should do this, or just, you know, didn't want to see you as much, so they put you on a task force that meets really regularly, right? And so here you are, and you can now bring all of your skills and perspective to this. And I think that's, you can model that for people too. Like there's going to be a commission in 2 years, and there's 2 others, right, that are simultaneously working on this really big project alongside you all. And that's the kind of civic culture I really want to see in the city that, you know, I work and live in. So thank you again for all of this.
One thing I wanted to ask, and maybe Gloria and Robin, you can chime in on your experience and how you went about it, and it might just be an operational question that we get to later. I hear the agency that's been called up a few times around like truly making a decision that's based on best practice and the data and the listening that we do, and not necessarily just on precedent. And then I also see that there's a ton of structure in the meetings ahead, and I'm trying to figure out how to especially given the vast majority of our perceived identities and the work that we need to do to listen to others. What are the ways that, like, can we ask for listening sessions and like mix up the agendas? Like, what are the ways that we actually can act on that agency and then also can implement the mandate on getting the right perspectives in the room?
That's an
Yeah.
excellent question.
Yeah, you're asking a good question. Low key, you know, like Jamie and the team that you've been introduced to, they work on your behalf. Like the city has resourced this, like lean into that, like lean into that power. Like you're also like, there's like, you know, Jamie can't refer to like, this is how the previous salary commission did, you know, don't stray from this. Like you're setting the thing. So like ask away, you know, you are all very important figures in this. Literally the government can't form without a decision about this, right? They can't plan, budgets are on hold. Like, please think about what you think it would take. Like if you were running your ideal version of this community engagement, ask for it. You know, what's the worst that can happen? They'd come back with you with some proposals, understanding how you see this, right? Like your HR best practices professionals, you can install for this scenario what you think needs to happen. So I really just triple down on like, do it. Like ask that question formally, and you know, Jamie and team will come back. When we started for February of 2021, right? Like, you know, back in the original charter, like there was no playbook, there was no guidebook. We added staff along the way, we increased budgets, we asked for more, and I think it was well worth it, right? Don't accept conventional wisdom. In fact, there is no conventional wisdom for the salary commission. This is the first.
I want to confirm what Robin said, which is that the structure we've provided you so far is really just kind of a baseline. It's our best thinking about how to get us from A to Z in the very limited amount of time that we have. But there is lots of room for adaptation and for you to really direct that work plan, which is one of the reasons. And Commissioner Medress, you haven't been able to have a one-on-one with myself or Barb yet, but it's one of the reasons why we asked so many questions about what you were thinking around community engagement and, you know, these other items, because we really want you to take leadership in developing this work plan and offering ideas about how you want to deliberate and make your decisions.
I think one of the things that I would add is, as you think about these things, some of the information that you may seek to know and understand may be information that the team can get to you, and doesn't necessarily have to be something that is you know, has time on an agenda per se. It can be something that is shared via email. So, you know, like I know that the city already has multiple commitments across the city in different areas around equity. And I mean, you might have a question around that and how it pertains to you know, compensation in that regard. And, you know, it sounds like, you know, was it the deputy director of the Bureau of Human Resources? Like there are lots of folks that you know, can provide information. So call upon them if you feel like they're relevant. And I know that the team is committed to getting you as much information as possible and providing as much context. And yeah, so.
Yeah, it's not just the 5 of you too and the staff. Like you already know so many Portlanders, organizations, publications were so engaged on the charter front. They didn't go away, right? They're still all there. They still have their networks and connections. Fully utilize the fact that, like, you know, way more than like a year ago, the average Portlander knows a lot more about Portland charter reform, right? And they have ideas, and they probably had thoughts. They thought through it on the election. So really tap into that. I think like the shared knowledge from just like Portlanders was astounding as we were reading through all the thousands of comments. And like we have really smart people in our city, and you know, use them to the best that you can.
Okay, I'm looking around. How do we feel about this conversation? Good. Are we feeling ready to move on to our next topic? We still have plenty of time. I don't want to rush us. Just want to be responsive. Any other additional insights, reflections, questions?
I just wanted to say thank you for your emphasis on kind of what I'm hearing, I think, is that you're saying to back away from fear in this process, which I really appreciate hearing, because I do think being in a public arena like this can be a bit intimidating. I know for me, at least, I like to be a little bit more in the background. So I appreciate your honesty and your insight into this process. It's been very helpful.
One other quick thing I would like to add too is that we may want you to come back at some point when we get further along and we start looking at working with putting out the proposed plan and sort of what kind of steps, what you learned from that process specifically. So that might be really helpful down the road at some point, because I suspect it'll get a little scarier when we actually have to start producing something that other people are going to need to understand, and how you think about that could be very helpful.
Commissioner Johnson, I am in service and would happily come and provide any support that you needed.
Thank you.
I'm very engaged. Like as a HR professional and someone who is also just committed to seeing Portland be a more democratic place. Like I really am thankful that all of you have stepped up and stepped into this role. So thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Solidarity, anything you need, I'm happy to support. So.
Well, what fantastic encouragement for you all to, as you do this work, take a deep breath, dig deep, find your courage, and think creatively and expansively about this opportunity. So thank you so much, Robin and Gloria, for spending so much time with us today. It sounds like you have an open invitation to come back, so we will definitely work with the commissioners to identify future opportunities to engage with you again. Really appreciate your bravery and everything that you've done to get us to this moment. Thank you. You are both obviously welcome to stay for the entire meeting, contribute as you wish for the rest of the evening, but we will be moving on to our next topic. Before I get this machinery back up and running, I noticed in the chat that not everyone has turned their little thing to everyone. I don't know what to call it, but if you open your chat bubble there, it should pull up a dialog box. And where you see who can see your messages, there's a little pull down menu. For most of you, it probably says hosts and panelists. Would love for you to click that button and click everyone. This allows the opportunity for the public to also see your chat, and we will be downloading and providing all of that as part of the public record with our meeting minutes. Can I get a thumbs up when everyone has been able to do that?
I tried to do it before. I don't see the option on my little bubble.
Me neither.
Me neither.
It's just
It only
host
says
and
host and
panelists.
panelists.
Yeah.
It doesn't have an everyone option.
No.
Okay. Well, then that's part of us learning our Zoom logistics, and we will make sure to fix that in the future. I think Liam's taking note. We will work on that and make sure that that is provided.
Yeah, there should be like a down arrow next to hosts and panelists. So if you guys do see that, if you just click on it, it should give you other options.
I think the other options are just one-on-one versus everyone. I did check.
Got it. Okay.
I agree. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, I looked and even typed everyone. And
Okay.
that couldn't find. Yeah.
Thanks for your
Okay.
diligence. It probably has to do with some setting that some button I didn't push when I set up the webinar. So we will look into that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's get back into our conversation after that wonderful talk. I'm going to move us forward to a discussion about our foundational documents. Okay. Let's see. Hold on. There we go. So this is actually a really helpful segue because as you process the conversation we just had, let it connect back to how you would like to see that reflected in your foundational documents. To make room for the conversation that we just had, we decided not to dive into these documents today, not only because we didn't have time, but because it was a good opportunity for you all to reconsider them with a little more context. So all of you received the original Charter Commission foundational documents as a starting place with an attached survey asking for your thoughts about how we might adapt them to serve this commission. And thank you to those who offered ideas. I have reviewed them and will be prepared to offer new drafts to you all to read and think about before our next meeting. However, I am willing to wait on putting those together right away. If any of you would like to read them again and perhaps take the survey again to offer new thoughts. Is anyone interested in doing that?
Hi again. I did answer the survey, but like soon before this meeting. So just wanted to lift in the bylaws the way we make decisions. Some of the concerns I have is the I don't know how the word is used in the document, but is kind of an adapted consensus decision making. I typically use FIST to 5. I don't know if folks are familiar with that because it offers a closer process for consensus instead of are we all good or mostly good? Let's go with it. But it offers an opportunity for managing power within a group where folks with quote unquote minority opinions are actually have more access to be heard and to be counted. In this particular commission, of course, that is a concern of mine. I am what the US calls Latina. I call myself Puerto Rican, immigrant, at least politically immigrant, and a speaker of English as a second language. So minoritized experience and opinions tend to be then always the minority, therefore not having real decisional power, even if at the table of decision-making power. So that was a concern of mine, not only because that is my preference in general, but given the configuration and demographics that I perceive within this group, that I want to make sure that there's a meaningful representation for the communities of color, immigrant communities in Portland in the commission. So that was the only thing I felt strongly about from the foundational documents.
Thank you for sharing that. Does anyone have any thoughts about that?
I appreciate all of that. I think it feels really important to me as well that we make sure that we're hearing from a number of people, we're considering a number of viewpoints, because it could be easy for us to fall into a bit of a narrow scope, I think, just given our makeup. So I appreciate that.
Anybody else?
I'm personally unfamiliar with FIST to 5, I think is what you said. So I, echo what Maura just said, and Root, I appreciate you sharing. But I'm just curious what the FIST to 5 is.
Commissioner Martinez Alicea, would it be helpful if you provided us with some additional material that I could send out to the other commissioners in consideration, and we could kind of dive a little deeper into that particular piece of it at the next meeting? Or would you like to
I'd
take
be
some
happy to.
time to, okay. Would that work for others?
I would like that a lot because I also do not know what it means.
I've mostly used it in the context of discussion versus like voting. So I'd be curious as to like how you're hoping that we can engage that way. Like, are you talking about mostly like our internal consensus when we're discussing something about like, oh, this is a good idea. Yeah, I'm really excited. Versus like the actual voting. Because one of the concerns that I had was just having like, 3 voices, if there's consensus with 3 and that being enough.
Yeah, that's typically the tension point. I use it for both temperature checking and for voting.
Great. I would like, yeah, I've never used it for the voting part, so I'd be very curious. My understanding is, and we'll probably talk about this later, but the FISTA of 5 is your comfort level. So when you're talking about something, you're like, yeah, I'm like a 1, or I'm pretty comfortable, I'm a 3, or, I'm all in, I'm a 5 here. So that you can say like, I agree this much.
Could you clarify in the bylaws? I think that's in the bylaws exactly what, for the final decision recommendation, what's built into the charter now, so that we can make sure that, because I don't think we have any ability to change that. So if you could confirm that, and then we can think about how we use the FISTA of 5 once I completely understand it, which I'm happy to Google tonight, which I probably will do. So I really understand it. So we would use that in terms of the, in general for our discussions. But I think if I remember correctly, we don't have a lot of choice when it comes to the actual final recommendation to the council. And I want to just know exactly kind of what the charter says so that we are all on the same page there.
What do you mean about the final recommendations to council?
Doesn't the charter require the salary commission to, aren't there rules around voting and recommending something to council at the end of this process?
No, you are not recommending to council. You have authority to set the salaries of the elected officials. Nothing goes to council for a vote.
So was there a process, and again, I may have this confused with, but isn't there some process that says that they will, if we don't come to an understanding, that they will then accept the final, like the second to the last final vote or something?
Sure.
Maybe that's just for the original commission and it isn't for us.
Yes, I think what you're referring to is that in some of the commissions, like the Independent District Commission, there's a requirement for a supermajority of the body to vote on their proposal. They have the opportunity to do it twice. If they cannot reach a supermajority to move things directly to like a ballot or to make those recommendations directly, it would go to the council. The latest proposal would go to the council for a vote. There is no such mandate as directed for the Salary Commission. All the code says is that 3 members of the commission need to agree and vote on the final salary proposal. If this body was unable to come to 3 votes, it is unclear at this time what that would mean. We have already built in 2 votes into July just in case, but we would have to refer to our city attorneys to indicate to us what would happen if that wasn't going to happen. I don't think that the Charter Commission anticipated that there would be much controversy and a need for kind of a supermajority vote.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure again, that was I knew there was something somewhere in one of those documents that was referring to voting, and I don't want to get sideways with that.
Yeah, of course. Yes, we'll definitely make sure those mandates are in your foundational documents. So it looks like there's some more information that will be coming about FISTA of 5 for you all to consider. Are other people also interested in maybe thinking about those foundational documents for a little bit longer and offering any additional feedback? I'm getting a couple head nods. So how about by the end of this weekend, would that work for you all? If you could commit to kind of finish your review and your information to me by Sunday night, I can spend time on Monday redrafting and time to send back out to you on next Tuesday. So you're prepared to discuss and approve when we meet on April 11th. And Commissioner Martinez Alicea, if you are willing to send me that FISTA 5 information sooner than that, I can make sure to incorporate that into the documents as well. Is that a deal? Does that work? Okay. It looks like we are good to go. Perfect. Thank you for obliging me on that. We are doing great, everyone. And now it's time for us to talk about the meat and potatoes. It's just the stuff that I know you're really interested in diving into. So let's get into that. Let me check the time. We are perfectly on time. This is going wonderful. Thank you all for being so great. Okay, so you in the email I sent you last week, you all received a summary report of the different roles and responsibilities of elected officials that outlines all of the ways in which the duties of elected officials are specifically called out in the code. And this summary is the closest approximation to a job description that we have. The city has never had job descriptions for elected officials, and it didn't seem to be a very helpful exercise to create them now, at least in terms of the traditional way that they are used. So this slide is merely a summary of that summary that I'm going to walk you through. To be clear, we do not have expertise on the code in this meeting today, so I'm just going to take any questions you may have and follow up with the actual experts, and we can either provide that in a follow-up report or invite someone to come talk to you directly, whichever you prefer. So let's go over this. The revised charter provides that on January 1st, 2025, all legislative and quasi-judicial authority will be the responsibility of the council, and all executive and administrative authority will be the responsibility of the mayor. So a kind of bifurcation of the authority that they all kind of have right now. The revised charter also assigns specific duties to council, the mayor, and a city administrator who is hired by the mayor and designated to carry out certain executive and administrative functions. So these changes mean that the council will be the legislative and policy body for the city, which means they will be the ones to adopt laws and the budget, raise city revenues, and appropriate funds for city functions. The mayor, aided by the city administrator, will be responsible for the execution and enforcement of the city's laws and budget priorities, and for administration of the city's bureaus and facilities. So the revised charter is really intended to provide a broad framework, which means that current and former, or future, not former, current and future elected officials must develop and implement the details of the new government structure. It's a little complicated, as you can imagine. So the general allocation of these powers in Portland's revised charter is provided in Chapter 2, Section 101. But Chapter 2, Section 104, called General Powers, also contains a number of important elements regarding allocation of charter powers. So the summary materials you were provided really points you to the specific places in code where those powers can be found if you're interested in digging down further. What questions do you have about this that I can find answers for you?
So one quick question. So the mayor will and the city administrator will draft a budget that then goes to the council to be approved, or the council will be putting the budget together, passing it, and then sending it to the mayor and the city administrator to implement and manage?
Great question. I don't know for sure. It is my belief that the mayor creates an initial budget and the council will debate and approve it. I don't know that for sure, so I will definitely follow up with the correct answer.
Thank you.
Anything else before we move on to the next part? We feel comfortable with kind of what we know at the moment? Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm now going to hand it over to Barb Seipels. I can take a break from talking for a while. She's going to lead you through the next part of the conversation. Barb.
Thank you, Jamie, and good evening, commissioners, and thank you for being here. So my part of the presentation is simply sort of an overview of how the city of Portland currently sets pay for our regular employees. And sort of to echo what you heard from the charter commissioners earlier, this is not a suggestion that you follow the city's methodology in setting pay, or that there's any expectation that you would use the city's practices about how we set pay for regular employees. This really is just to give you information about how things are done, and hopefully maybe spark some thoughts about what you like about this process, what you'd want to leave behind, or even just sparking thoughts about what data or information about compensation you might like us to provide to you. To get started, this is just a bit of an overview of the things that I'll cover. Most of them you can find, most of the information I'm sort of going to summarize, you can find on the city's website, on the Bureau of Human Resources pages. And so what I wanted to talk about is the city's current pay philosophy for how we set pay for non-elected employees, the methods that we use for assigning compensation for those jobs. And then there's also a little bit of information that we found about other salary commissions and how they have the methods that they have used to set pay for their elected officials. And I'll say now that two of the examples we're using, our very own Commissioner Sampson is very closely associated with those commissions. So I'm sure that we could hear a lot of much more detailed information if that was something you were interested in on how those commissions functioned. So let's start with the City of Portland's pay philosophy. The pay philosophy is outlined in our what we call HRARs, so Human Resources Administrative Rules. It's not important, but if you are looking on the website, that's worth Googling. All of the compensation information is in section 8.04 of our administrative rules. But we can go to the next slide. So the city's compensation philosophy is very straight to the point. You might say it's not even very philosophical, but essentially the goal of the reason why we pay at the city is to further three goals. We want to get people in the door, we want to keep them here, and we want them performing at the highest levels that they can possibly perform. So that is what we intend to do with our pay and our pay structures. So our rules have a little bit of guidance about how we should go about doing that. We should consider not only wages, but we should also consider indirect compensation, things like what do our healthcare premiums cost? What does our vacation accrual look like? So we want to think about compensation not just as pay, but also as those benefits that could be, sort of monetized. So things that add value to people's take-home pay. We also, when setting pay for regular employee classifications, we also want to consider compression between classifications. So for example, if we have a manager classification and a supervisor classification and an analyst, we want to make sure that, you know, in this hierarchy, there is enough room between those, between the pay of those levels so that they don't bump up and compress against each other. So that's kind of what we mean by considering compression when we're setting pay for classifications. We also want to take a look at what kind of ways can we encourage that highest level of performance. For example, by providing incentives based on, you know, meeting performance objectives, so a merit system. And I should probably step back a moment and just talk about terminology very quickly. Using the word classification. A classification is a broad umbrella description of a body of work. And typically these bodies of work are recognized out in the world, out in the marketplace. So for example, attorney is a classification, analyst is a classification, custodian is a classification, wastewater operator. So these are just jobs that capture a distinct body of work. So again, when the city is setting pay for classifications, we're looking at wages and benefits. We're looking at things like offering merit increases. We also have set it up in our policies that we offer cost of living increases every year. And we also have defined and codified how we apply those cost of living increases as well. We have a cap and we link it to the consumer price index. So we have a very sort of structured way of applying COLA. And then the final piece that our administrative rules direct us to consider is the external market. Are we paying competitively? Are we, how does our pay look in relation to our competitors? So these are the factors that we consider when we are setting pay for classifications. We can go to the next slide. So that's sort of so what I just mentioned are kind of the broad guidelines for what our policy tells us that we should do in relation to setting pay. But then we also have a practice that we use to, you know, that aligns with those guidelines. And that practice is our methodology. So what methods do we use to meet those guidelines and meet our goals of attracting people, retaining them, and encouraging them to do their best work. So when we are, our guidelines tell us we have to be externally competitive, which means to us, which is the way that we have interpreted that to mean, is that we want to pay what the market pays. So we are looking to pay what the average compensation is for a particular classification out in the world. So whatever the average market pay for attorneys is, we want our pay for attorneys, for our attorney classification to match that, for example. So how do we determine, you know, how do we approach that market research? First of all, what we would do is we would look at the duties and qualifications of the work under review. So we would find out what are the tasks and activities associated with this work. What kind of certifications or licenses do you need to do this work? Do you need a nurse practitioner license? Do you need a certified public accountant certification? Do you need a pesticide applicator certification? What qualifications do you need to do the work? And also what kind of skills, abilities do you need? Do you need to be able to type? Do you need to have a certain degree of knowledge about an academic subject? Do you need a bachelor's degree? If you do need a bachelor's degree, can you substitute that with experience? And then what kind of experience do you need? Is this the kind of work that could be performed without having, a deep background actually doing the work? Or is this at a level that, to actually do the job and get the work done, you need 5 years of experience in a subordinate role? Or you need supervisory experience in order to be able to do the job. So that's the first thing we would do when setting pay for new work, is determine just what is the work, what do you need to perform it. Once we have that defined, we would take a look at our current classification structure and see what other classifications that already exist at the city have similar levels of authority, responsibility, knowledge requirements, certifications, and what do we pay those classifications at the city. So this is kind of our first reference point. Then after we've sort of gotten a sense of where this classification might reside in our existing structure in terms of pay, we'd want to calibrate that with what the market is telling us. So then the next step would be to conduct our market research. So we can go to the next slide. So we have some tools at the city that help us with our market research. We have some actuarial databases, and we also that we subscribe to, and then they're proprietary. We pay for that information, and then we also use survey data, and we also pay for surveys every year to get the most up-to-date information. Most of the surveys we use are from a company called Milliman, which most of you or some of you may be familiar with. They're a regional actuarial company that gathers salary data, and they have they're headquartered in Seattle, but they have a big office here in Portland. They're very well respected. So we use survey data as well as information from our own proprietary databases that we subscribe to. But then more often we actually use direct research. And so that means our analysts will go to individual websites of individual jurisdictions. And for example, we've developed this body of work. We've defined the duties and the qualifications. Now we'll go to the City of Hillsborough's website and we'll look for that same work. And we'll find out, Hillsborough really doesn't have this job at all. So let's go and see what the City of Beaverton is doing. And if we find a job at the City of Beaverton, we notate what Beaverton pays that position or that classification, and so on. And so we develop a big spreadsheet of all the compensation data points that we can find. The reason it's kind of interesting in the city, the reason why we sort of do this direct research is mostly because We collaborate with our labor partners on compensation, and in an effort to be transparent, we present our market research sometimes during union negotiations, and this way our labor partners can see exactly where the information came from. They can follow links to the classification descriptions that we used to match our job with the other agencies' classification. So, two ways we get information: through survey data and through direct research. And when we're doing this research, when we're matching jobs, we want to make sure that at least 70% of the duties in our classification, we want to make sure that at least, we want to make sure that that at least 70% of the duties in the classification of the external organization matches the duties in our classification. So one kind of helpful thing to note about market research is that you will never find your exact job out in the world. It's always going to be slightly, have a few more duties, a few less duties, have some different duties. It might be slightly, have more responsibility, have a slightly lower scope. So you never find the exact match, but the idea is the more data points you have, the better your results are going to be, because some of the jobs are going to be sort of at a higher scope, some are going to be at a lower. And so the idea is that you're really looking for that average, that market average. So you want to get at least 70% of the duties to align to call it a match. And you also want to look at the qualifications. If your position requires a nursing license and the position that you're looking at out in the market has similar duties, but it doesn't require a license, and then typically you wouldn't match those as being comparable enough to gather compensation data for. So for the city's practice, we consider our labor market, the information or the jurisdictions that we're gathering market information from. We only look at public employers. We don't look at industry jobs, so we never compare what our application analysts are making at Intel. We're looking at what application analysts are making at Beaverton, the city of Beaverton instead. And part of the reason for that is that our administrative rules do tell us that we want to look at total compensation. So we want to look at not only monetary rewards, but also benefits, and public employers have the closest benefit structures. So things like, the PERS system, pension plans, the cost of healthcare premiums. These are all things that kind of spur us to exclude industry from our market matches. When we do go look at the market, we're again thinking back to the administrative rules that tell us that we should be externally competitive. So we really are focused on the pay of our competitors. And typically for the vast majority of jobs at the city, we are looking at local public organizations for our compensation data. So if I am trying to find out what to pay the HR manager classification. I'm going to look at what does the city of Beaverton pay their HR manager? What does TriMet pay their HR manager? What does Hillsborough pay? So I'm looking at my competition in this local market. I'm not really going to go and look and see what the city of Nashville pays its HR managers. However, there are some cases where the city has work that that requires us to look at those national markets because the local market doesn't have the a robust amount of talent that meets those specific needs of that classification. So, for example, we recently classified, or within the last few years, classified, I think our working title was Dean of Education. This was a classification that is responsible for creating a training curriculum for the Portland Police Bureau, but it's also responsible for initiating some culture change. So this was sort of a highly academic, the role required a very high level of academic knowledge, very specific experience. And so in that case, we went, we knew that we were competing at a national level for candidates that could fill that role. And so that in that case, we were looking to see what other cities across the country would pay for that sort of work. And again, it's sort of reflecting back on roles like the chief of police or the chief administrative officer. These are roles that people will move across the country for. So our competition really is nationwide. But mostly for our typical majority of city jobs, we look at the local market. And so we try and align our pay of classifications with the market average to be competitive. Also ensure that it's in alignment with our internal classification structure as it already exists. But we kind of consider anything within 5% of that average, that number we get after doing collecting all of the pay information from all these different jurisdictions. We get that average pay, but we consider if we are within plus or minus 5% of that average, we are competitive. And then finally, is the final piece of our methodology is we apply a geographic differential so that the job markets in Seattle and Portland and Nashville are all leveled based on the costs of labor in these very different economic environments. So that is how the city sets pay for our typical or our classifications for non-elected officials. And I think we can go to the next slide. And then super quickly, well, I guess we don't have to be super quick, but and because we have some time, maybe I should ask if at this point, yeah, there are any questions, Commissioner Martinez Salazar?
Thank you. Yeah, but I have a question. Thank you so much, Barb. I was wondering about the previous slide. You had the databases, the direct research that the city of Portland typically uses. Has there been any tools the city has used or is using currently to buffer for how the market replicates inequities in pay, like the gender pay gap, racialized pay gap? Is there a tool the city is currently using? Do you know?
Great question. It is not. We are routinely following our directive to be competitive to the market. So we are strictly looking at competitiveness as opposed to equity. Yeah, Commissioner Sampson?
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of the information. I have a couple of questions, but if any of them are like jumping ahead or might be covered later, I can hold off on them. But when you talked about the indirect compensation, such as benefits, retirement, vacation, is that something that elected officials are entitled to?
I believe they are. Well, I know they're entitled to benefits like medical, dental, vision. I'm not sure about vacation. I know I believe they're part of PERS. I don't know. That is a great question.
Okay.
I'll have to get some information there.
That sounds great. And then can you share how salaries have been set and maintained up to this point for these positions? And I guess more specifically, if a cost of living adjustment is followed for these positions or has been in the past?
Yeah, great question. So we look at pay. We're a relatively reactionary organization in that we look at pay during union negotiations, and we focus on classifications that the union has expressly called out or that management has called out. And the union will get will make requests, presumably based on what their membership is asking for, and then from the management perspective, if managers are experiencing a recruitment or retention issue, that's typically when they ask for a review of a particular unionized classification, but typically we look at pay during negotiations, and then again, it is not sort of systematic at present, but we are working towards a systematized regular schedule of when we sort of refresh our market data and see where we are and what needs to change.
Yeah.
And apologies, you're also asking about COLA?
Yeah, more specifically for the elected official positions. So being that this commission is new, coming in and setting salaries and it hasn't existed in the past, I was curious if consistent with what the city's doing for regular employees with cost of living, if that was like the method of keeping up salaries in previous
Right.
years.
No, so we do not
Okay.
apply COLA, to
Okay.
the elected official pay.
Thank you.
Barb, before we go to Commissioner Johnson,
Yeah.
do we have information about how the salaries for the current electeds were set originally?
That is you read my mind, Jamie, and I did not have time to find that out. I mean, I know that that they're responsible for setting their own pay, but I don't know what that process has been in the past or how recently they have changed pay. My understanding that is that they haven't updated in a while, but that's definitely something I can find out. And Commissioner Johnston?
Yes, thank you. So just to go back to the COLA issue, do all of your union contracts have regular language, annual language on CPI indexing so that there's an automatic COLA built in, at least in the term of each contract? And what index do most of them use?
That is correct. They do have that language written into the contracts for the length of the contract. And they do use the consumer price index, but I don't have a deeper understanding other than that, but I can see what I can find out.
So then when you look at COLAs for the non-represented employees, then are you using the same index?
I believe so, but I'll confirm that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Great. Any other questions about how the city sets pay for our regular non-elected folks? Awesome, then we can go to the next slide, which I won't purport to be an expert, but we did find some information about other salary commissions. And again, I think Commissioner Sampson is intimately familiar with a couple of these, so would be a great resource. But just very broadly, without getting into details, we did find some information about what the Washington County Commission that sets elected official pay, what their methodology was. And it looks like they do look at similar jobs out in the external market. They also do look at their internal job structure and pay structure, and they reference their compensation philosophy. They also considered the job duties of each job and the time commitment that was required to perform the duties. They listened to and accepted testimony, and they applied a COLA increase using their standard internal practice that they had adopted. And then we also looked at Multnomah County. It looks like they began by looking at the prior methodology to determine if that was still appropriate, but in our case, we don't have that luxury. They looked at market data as well. They looked at their internal structure when the market data was not forthcoming. They did look at that compression issue again, how pay between subordinates and supervisors, what's the gap there? Are they compressed, or is there a healthy gap? And then they also applied a cost of living adjustment. And then the final jurisdiction we looked at was Lane County, and they started with a review of their compensation philosophy. They had a sort of list of predetermined jurisdictions that they collected market data from. And I think this was, it wasn't immediately evident how they had arrived at these particular jurisdictions. But they also considered the pay of non-elected positions at their organization. They also adjusted for compression to make sure that subordinate supervisor pay had a gap, and they applied a cost of living adjustment as well. So those are some quick kind of broad overviews of other salary commissions. And then I just wanted to end my presentation here with the place where you can find the city's classification and compensation structures on our website, if that's of any interest. So that is all I had to offer today. And again, this was simply to spark some thinking and not intended to be a guide on how to move forward, but just to kind of check in and see if that has prompted any thoughts about information that you might want us to research or provide between now and your next meeting. And I do have a few things listed that we'll check out and provide answers for, but is there anything else we can look into for you?
I had a question. One of the other commissioners said that this new commission will have full-time positions. Is it currently considered full-time now for the current electeds?
Yes, that's correct. It is currently considered full-time now.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think I saw Commissioner Sampson's hand up first.
Thank you. I was curious if you could potentially provide, or if it's not readily available, look into what the most comparable cities are and whether or not they have salary commissions. I know for the counties, it's really limited in comparing county to county just because of those differences in structures and positions. So I'd be really interested to see examples of city salary commissions and their methodologies. And then along the same lines, just who the most comparable cities are, regardless of whether they have a commission or not, and whether, you know, that's based for these positions on population. It seems like that might be a big factor to be comparing to cities of a similar size. So yeah, maybe a two-part, looking at populations to see what other cities outside of Portland that we might need to be looking at so that we're looking at the correct size. And then the second part being cities that have salary commissions and reviewing their methodologies.
Absolutely. Commissioner Martinez-Salicea?
Yeah, I would like to know if there are tools that we can apply for some of our equity compensation analysis, given that the spirit of this new structure of government is to increase representation of historically marginalized communities. And what then in terms of duties, right? What are the duties that we're looking at in order to increase representation, in order to increase connection with or engagement with the community? We're talking about that would in one way or another inform more compensation, less compensation. What are the values of those particular skills or those particular the responsibilities? Are there comparisons to the expectations, right, of other elected officials that have that precise driver? So tools for equity analysis of compensation, and then are there comparisons that are specific to that spirit of increased representation for historically marginalized and historically not represented communities? I had another one and then I forgot, but hopefully I'll remember. Thank you, Barb.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Johnston?
Could I just say it's Johnson?
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. One quick question. We are setting compensation for the auditor's position, is that correct?
That's correct.
Is that position changing at all, given that there's I understand the mayor's job and the council members' positions are changing, but is the auditor's role changing? And is, what would we want to look at for that if if it is changing and, or not changing for that matter in terms of compensation?
That's a great question. Jamie, do you have a sense of changes to the auditor?
I do not believe there were any changes to the auditor codes. We can certainly follow up and confirm.
So there we would probably be looking at just making sure that we are looking at comparables and staying competitive according to those guidelines that you gave us, Barb, in terms of how you set compensation for non-elected and non-represented employees. Does that make sense?
Well, I will say that the auditor is elected, and that you're not limited to using the methodology we use for non-elected staff. So, yeah.
All right, thank you.
I just received real-time confirmation that is correct. The auditor's role is not changing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Any other questions or thoughts?
Looks like Commissioner Engers.
Oh, sorry.
Muted. Just in terms of additional information, I'd be curious to know what percentage the current mayor and commissioner salaries represent in the budget.
Got it.
Thank you.
You bet.
Could we just add to that the cost of their staff, not the staff that runs the bureaus, but their regular team in their offices, since one of the charter commissioners mentioned that because that will be adjusting to, given the resources will be shifting around, but it'd be interesting to know kind of what those costs are too.
That sounds great. Can you clarify what you mean the budget costs, not necessarily the salaries of those positions that are reporting?
Well, I'm not sure.
Both?
Maybe both.
Okay.
Because that will, if we're talking about changing the number of council members, and then we've also heard about changing the makeup of their staff structures, that might be something that we should know, even if it isn't necessarily germane to making the decision on the exact salary. Somebody will ask, I'm sure, somewhere along the way anyway.
So those decisions about kind of restructuring council offices and roles, responsibilities of staff will be coming at a later time. And we will certainly provide you that information as soon as we have it. I think we're looking at sometime in May that information, those decisions will be made.
Great, thank you.
Anything else? Oh my goodness, I'm about to go to this last slide, y'all. Are you ready? Are you ready for this? Okay. Congratulations. We have successfully completed our first meeting. What you see on the slide is just a little information about what you can expect next. But again, you know, talking about agency, you are also in charge. So please let us know if there are different ways in which you'd like to see us structure these meetings, different information you'd like us to provide. Are there, you know, if there are additional requests from the commissioners about these future meetings, you can always contact us in between meetings at any time. And we will be following up with you probably in between the meetings with all of the questions you've provided today. So in general, the next meeting is going to look a lot like a more deep dive into kind of the foundational documents and your roles and responsibilities as commissioners. We've received requests to have some specific folks come talk to us about things like your responsibilities with media. We might have a city attorney come talk to you. We want to make sure that you feel comfortable in understanding your role and, you know, limitations and challenges and authorities that you have. But we will also be moving forward on the kind of next leg of the research and analysis that you've asked for. Does that sound good? Any questions or concerns about that? Well then, I am happy to say that we are officially adjourned. Thank you to everyone who joined us, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you so much.